trying to say is that because you were so comfortable with what you knew about the company specifically, because you were so passionate about it, you seemed calmer.
Hey everyone, welcome to On The Go with Manav. I'm your host Manav, and today I'm here with Samah. Two interesting facts about Samah are that she used to live in 4 countries actually, and she is a trained dancer who's been dancing for 13 years. Today we're going to be talking about Samah's journey after recently completing her industry placement at Warner Bros. Entertainment in the UK, and she was a finance planning and commercial analysis intern. And we are very interested to learn more about the experience, what it was like to work at Warner Bros. Did she recommend it? Why she enjoyed it? So please, Samah, feel free to tell us a bit more about yourself and we'll get straight onto it.
Thank you for having me. So my name is Samah, and I did a placement here in 2021, so 2021 to 2022, and I did my placement here at Warner Brothers. Like Manav mentioned, it was in the finance team, so financial planning and commercial planning and analysis was my exact role. I was hired as a split intern across financial planning and commercial planning and analysis, and that's why it's such a long name. So I kind of did 50% of each role, which was super interesting. I was also the first cohort of placement students applying during COVID, or the first cohort since the pandemic, because as we know, it hit in March 2020, and September 2020 was when our cohort started applying for placements. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this discussion, and I hope it helps as many people out there.
Awesome. So Samah, could you please tell us exactly what were you doing? Maybe not last year, because a year ago you were in the middle of your placement at Warner Brothers, but what were you doing around 2 years ago?
So 2 years ago would have probably been right before my placement. And as we were in our second year, which we both know was a difficult year because it was a year in the pandemic. So I started applying for placements around September 2020, which is when students are recommended to. But there's something that we just don't realize um, when we're so new to applying to jobs and everything, is that a lot of the big four or the banks or big financial firms just open their applications as early as Freshers Week and shut them probably halfway through October, which is also when people actually start doing things. So that was a very, I would say, overwhelming period. First, to be in a whole, in a pandemic, switching to on everything being online and applying to roles with absolutely no prior experience, because I personally have had no work experience whatsoever before this. So I think 2 years ago, that's what I started doing. In term one was I was just trying to wrap my head around everything, getting loads of rejections. But then it's only towards the end of term one that I actually decided that I need to seek help from the career zone or the careers team or my family or like people I know to help me actually fine tune my applications. And then I continued doing that through term two, and finally got my placement in April 2021.
Okay, so that was around 2 years ago actually, which is,
Yes,
wow, can't believe that's how time has flown by so fast.
I know.
So before you applied to Warner Brothers, how many applications did you send out previously and what were the outcomes like?
So I did a total of 35 applications, and that includes from like stage one to stage five, so like all the stages. At first, I think up to like I probably don't remember the number, but for the early stages at least. But up until like November, I did not cross the psychometric testing stage, which is the second stage. It was, I think Volkswagen was the first company that asked me for an interview late November, early December. After which, I started getting a lot of interviews, video interviews, or one-on-one interviews for smaller firms. And I had about three assessment centers. Um, I was invited for three assessment centers, which were for Samsung, Mondelez, and Warner Brothers. I could not attend the Samsung assessment center because of personal reasons, but then I did the Mondelez one, and then about 10 days later, I did the Warner Brothers one. But yeah, in total, I applied to 35 companies.
Wow, 35 is a lot of
Yeah,
companies.
it is.
And how did you deal with rejection throughout the journey?
I think I still remember the first time I got my rejection. It was from EY. That was my first ever rejection, and I was sobbing and I had no idea what I was gonna do. I thought that was the end of my placement journey. But as as I started applying to more firms, I realized it's so common because rejection isn't once you actually put in the effort into an application. I'm not saying when you're like just not doing it with just not giving it your 100%, but when you do give your 100% and you do everything you think is right to apply to a company, um, I realized that rejection isn't personal because the company is also looking for a certain personality. They're also looking for a certain type of person, certain a person with certain skills or a person with a certain background. Could be academic background, could be just your personality. And I actually applied for the peer mentor scheme, which is something the business school offers. I don't know if the other schools offer it, but I know the business school offers it. And you're basically paired up with a mentor who is a fourth year, so he's already completed his placement. So he told me when I was obviously really demotivated and just I didn't know what I was doing wrong. He told me that the right company will always find you, and that when he joined his company, which was Unilever, he felt like he'd just known everyone for like years, like he just felt that sort of connection. And I feel like that's so true. I'm glad that the 34 companies before Warner Brothers rejected me because I just felt like I was in the right place and I fit right into the firm. So yeah, rejection can get very um it can be very demoralizing, it can be demeaning, it can get personal at times, but as long as you have your head in the game, and I feel like you just I just kind of kept going, getting back up and realizing, okay, this is done. What have I learned from it? Let me apply it to my next application and go ahead. Some companies also offer feedback. Usually the bigger brands don't have the time, which is fair, but some companies do give you a feedback report, which is really helpful because then you kind of have everything like, okay, I see it now. I see where I went wrong, and now I can fix that. So as long as you don't take rejection personally, I think it also kind of motivated me to some extent because I was like, I'm gonna do it. Like I can do this, so I'm gonna use this rejection as like fuel to keep going. So I think that's kind of how I dealt with rejection.
Everyone deals with rejection differently, so I'm glad to hear that you found your way of passing through this or
Yeah.
persevering through obviously the struggles that obviously that led to the best outcome that you could have imagined. And do you still remember? I'm sure you do. You remember the exact moment when you found out. Could you please tell us where you were? Who was the first person you called? And just describe one word you felt.
Um, One word I felt, I was I was kind of well, it's not one word, but it was like a dream come true because
Okay, 3 words. Yeah.
yeah, three words. Because it's Warner Brothers and it's Friends, and I'm obsessed with Friends, and so I just felt like, oh my god, I'm in dreamland. Um, so yeah, it was kind of like a dream come true. And maybe if you want to say one word, I was kind of in disbelief that it's finally happened. Like I finally got what I wanted. The exact moment was I was actually in India because it was peak COVID, and the UK was in lockdown, so I couldn't fly back after Easter break or before Easter break, something like that. And usually, companies call you to tell you this, but I had given them my UK number, and they'd been trying to call me, and obviously that was switched off because I was in India. So I got an email from the HR contact, and he was like, "Hey, I've been trying to call you. Just let me know if we can set up a Teams meeting or something, just because I want to talk." And I went up to my mother and I was like, "Oh my God, why does he want to call me? Is he like calling me to tell me he's going to reject me?" And my mom's like, "I don't think that they'd try to call you to reject you." And so I went into my room, and he called me immediately. As soon as I replied, he called me and he gave me the news. And he was like, "Yeah, we'd like to offer you this role. You don't. What do you think? And if you agree, we'll start drafting the contract and everything." And I didn't even wait for him to finish. I just went, "Yeah, of course, of course, I'll take it." And my mom and my aunt were at home, and my grandma. My dad wasn't, so I went to my mom's room. I sat in front of her. I rang my dad, and I was like, "Okay, you guys, I did it." So it was kind of my parents. I think it'll always be my parents that I call first. And then I told my aunt and my grandma, and then my best friends, in the UK and at home. So that was kind of my order of how the day went.
Did you manifest this in a way?
Yeah, to some extent, but I'm a very strong believer of, if you want it, you have to make it happen. So I do believe in manifestation. I do believe in positive manifestation, but I also believe in your hard work will pay off. So I think a bit of both. And what I believe most is, right before my assessment center, I lost my granddad, and my granddad was the only one I told about this application, that okay, I'm applying to this company. And my granddad and I used to watch HBO all the time when I was younger. So he would always say that, "Of course you're gonna get it. Why won't you? Like, you're the best, you know." So I like strongly believe like that, like losing my granddad and then having this assessment center, like it just like gave me the strength to do it for him. So yeah, I did manifest it, but I do also believe that I really worked hard towards it, and that paid off.
It certainly did pay off. And I'm really happy for you that
Thank
it
you.
all worked out really well.
Yeah.
Now, when you started working at Warner Brothers, did you feel a sense of imposter syndrome?
No, and I think that's exactly because of what I said earlier, that the right company that's looking for your kind of personality will find you. And so from the day I started, I just felt like I belonged there, and I felt like the people actually wanted me around, and I wasn't trying to be someone I'm not. I was definitely just myself. Um, Clueless at first, for sure, as anyone would be, in a first time job. But no, I did not feel that way because exactly what I said earlier. And my manager was extremely, extremely kind. I think she is now my like role model, outside of like my parents, my first ever like professional role model. And so was my team. They made a lot of effort into actually the first couple of weeks organizing socials to like get me used to the team, used to the people, used to the culture. So no, I didn't feel that way, and I'm glad I didn't.
Do you ever wonder what was that one thing that possibly made your application stand out in front of hundreds of people, I'm sure, that applied for this?
Yeah, so actually, some companies give you feedback whether you're successful or not when you do an assessment center. Although I didn't get one for Warner, but I discussed this with my manager, and she actually mentioned it a year later, because it was when I was in the process of hiring my replacement. So almost a year after. She mentioned that what stood out about my application was that it didn't sound like my application answers, um, first, didn't really sound made up. So, like, when we were going through other people's application answers and stuff, this is when she explained to me that a company has its values, a company has its, successful stories, and that people know about because it's on their social media, it's on their websites and everything. But what stood out about my application was how personalized it was, how I used those, whether it was their IP, which is their intellectual property, so their characters or their stories that they've created, or anything that they've done, their CSR, anything. How I used that so personally in my application is what struck well with my team. Um, and also, when it came to my assessment center and my interview stage, it was the fact that I was quite smiley and just calm, instead of looking nervous. What they were trying to say is that because you were so comfortable with what you knew about the company specifically, because you were so passionate about it, you seemed calmer than the rest of them. Which I would say is so true, because I was so tensed for like some of the other ones I did, because I didn't know the company as well. But I feel like Warner, I just knew through and through, um, because I grew up watching it, I grew up invested in it. So your passion towards the company in a more realistic way, in a more personalized way. Sorry, my passion. I don't know why I said your. My passion towards the company in a more realistic way and a more personalized way really stood out to my manager and uh, HR, I think, and also how calm and collected and smiley. Very important, smile. Everyone mentioned this to me, that I was smiling a lot. So yeah, these were the kind of little things that she pointed out after.
Wow, that is really interesting, actually. That is so interesting that so much of that knowledge right there was what obviously helped you to get that
Yeah.
job out of, so many people. And
Yes.
it was like the fact that you ticked all of their boxes.
Hmm.
And now you realized a year later what they were looking for, and you can really apply that to any job application that you want.
Exactly. Exactly. True.
So obviously, now I'm going to get to the part where what was your favorite part about obviously working at Warner Brothers? And I'm sure you can name a lot.
Uh, yeah, I do have a few favorites. One, about the job, about the role specifically. Um, I really enjoyed the fact that the team was so transparent with me. I was like what 19, with 1.5 years of uni behind me, with 1 year being COVID. I mean, 2 years of uni behind me, but what 1 year we both had a COVID year, so and no job experience. But not once did they make me feel that I was just a young girl who didn't know as much as they possibly did, or the other people in the team did. They were always super transparent with me, super. Um, Everything was laid out on the table at all times. There were no secrets from the placement intern, which was great. And the amount of responsibility I was given uh, for an intern was great. Like, I wasn't just shoved in the corner making teas and coffees. I was actually introduced to new dashboards, new obviously Excel, PowerPoint, and the core Microsoft Office. But outside of that, I was introduced to Power BI, Tableau, and much more, which is super interesting. And also presenting, being able to present to not only the team, but I was also given the opportunity to present to the CFO, something I created, which I think is a lot of transparency, a lot of responsibility, a lot of trust. So I think that was my favorite part of the job, that I was trusted with real responsibility, and also how transparent my manager and the rest of my team was. Now to the more fun part. Um, Walking the red carpet was my favorite part. So we did. I mean, there were a few premieres and screenings. So definitely every movie we'd get to see early. We had a cinema in the office, which was great. But there were two premieres. One was for Reminiscence, but that was something called a blue carpet, which is a smaller, more intimate gathering. So we didn't actually like we weren't with the celebrities. but it was Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore. That premiere was like a world premiere, and we actually walked the red carpet with celebrities, and there were like there were barricades between us and the celebrities, but there were also barricades between us and like the crowd. So it was kind of like two lanes of people walking. So one was for the movie stars and the actual film, and the other was for all of the staff or media and stuff like that. So, well, that was a great day. It was a dream come true. It was like a fantasy. Um, yeah, so two of my favorite things about working for Warner would probably be those two, but also the kind of people I met. I think I've met some of my best friends there, and truly, in a very real sense, created a solid professional network. And even if I don't go back to Warner when I graduate, I know I will always, always have those people to fall back on to even give me advice about other things in life. So yeah, some of my favorite things about working there.
Dreams do come true. That's just what I'm going to say. Exactly how you pointed that. And obviously, making friends or the people at a workplace can really have just that long term impact in terms of the memories, staying in touch. It's just like university in a way. So
Yeah, true, exactly.
now back to the interview. I wanted to ask, how did you prepare in advance before the stages? How many stages were there?
So for Warner, we had five stages. The first one was fill out an application form, just like every company does, but they had six application questions we had to answer. So there were questions like, why you, why this role, why this company, and I think there were two or three these questions, like these why you, why this firm sort of questions. And then the rest of them were more competency based. So describe a time. I think my question was, describe a time you've used Excel skills at uni or for anything. And then there was a multitasking related question and group work related question. So we had to answer all of those questions. And then they said they would send us a response within 4 weeks. And then usually every firm has a psychometric testing after this stage, but Warner had it at the end. So after this, I was asked for a video interview, which was on higher view, and the team or members of the team would basically there was a video that would play, and they would say the question out loud, and then you had a minute to prepare and a minute to speak. And there were about 5 questions on there. Then again, a 4 week wait, and then I was asked for a psychometric testing, which was actually a little different. This was the first time I did something like this, but it was the usual math, um, which most companies have. But they also had an Excel test, so I actually had to create like pivot tables and format data and stuff like that, like basic Excel. Um, Not the most advanced level of Excel, but still, uh, it was quite different because not the other companies that I applied for didn't actually ask me for an Excel test. But this was great. So I did that, and then I had my assessment center, which had an icebreaker, and then a group task, and then a presentation, and then something called a speed interview, which was basically um, every team member just kind of speaks to you for like 5 minutes ish. And then after the assessment center ended, this was the end of the assessment center. About an hour later, I think I was emailed again from HR saying they really liked you. They'd like to speak to you again, which usually happens when they're deciding between 3 or 4 candidates, like the final few. So that was a more intense, I would say, and longer interview, which was very much competency based, situational questions, and also about relocating, salary, stuff like that. So yeah, that's about 5 stages. Yeah, 5 stages at Warner, and then I heard back within a week from the final interview.
How did you prepare for those question rounds or the final interviews?
Right, you asked me that earlier. Sorry. So I think their website and obviously social media and everything is really important. But I also reached out to, so two things that I was taught I could do is one, just type the name of the role on LinkedIn, or the name of, I don't know, the company or the HR contact or something, and reach out to them. But another thing is that I reached out to the career zone, because I reached out for help. I reached out for help with my application to fine tune my answers, to have mock interviews, stuff like that. The University of Exeter can actually put you in contact with their alumni as well. So people who are either working at that company right now or have recently returned or already worked there or something like that. So they put me in contact with someone who was unfortunately not in finance, but still, she was in marketing, but she was there at the time. And I emailed her, and then just to gain a little bit of insight into what it is that the company actually looks for, because I know the role description is already given to you, but there's such like tiny things that people don't realize. And I think like speaking to someone who's been in that position, um, or has been successful, really helps um, gain that perspective of what it is, what exactly are they looking for. And I think that really helped. So that is something I did to prepare. Reach out to people, obviously read their websites and personalize it. Yeah. And also, I think one thing I did was uh, kind of try to figure out what their competitors were doing, which for Warner is Disney, um, and kind of tried to figure out what Warner is also trying to do in the future. Is something that their competitors, is something that their competitor, which is Disney, was, is there something that they were doing that Warner wasn't, that I could maybe ask about, something like that. So I also did added that into my research, but that definitely in came in on like during later stages, like assessment center probably. But for application questions and stuff, I reached out to people working there.
That is definitely a very great advice and good advice. Like you said, very interesting as well how you approach that. And again, something that not many people, I guess you went beyond what they expected in a way. And I think
Exactly. Yeah.
like people can do a lot of those stuff,
Yeah.
but you went way beyond, which is great.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I have one more question for you, and this is for people who I guess were in your position, or even could be applying to Warner Brothers later on in the future. And again, it's their dream job. They might have applied before, or they might be afraid to apply just because of the amount of people applying, or just self doubt that they're not good enough. What would you say? Like, is there's like one or two pieces of advice you could give to that specific person who was in your position before you joined and had the best time at Warner Brothers? What would that be?
I think, like I said earlier, your personality should match the company, obviously. So the company will look for a certain personality. And if you truly believe that you would be the right fit, then I would just say just keep trying, because it's like I know I've applied to Warner only once, but I also applied for a placement role 35 times before that. So it's just perseverance, I think. And um to I think giving up is way easier than going keep you constantly going at it. And so whether it's Warner specifically or any other firm or any other dream or goal, I feel like perseverance is key. Um, and when it is meant to happen, it will. So if I wouldn't have gotten Warner that year, and maybe it was meant for me 3 years later, I would still keep trying. And I am in that position right now. Like I'm looking for grad jobs, and I haven't applied to Warner yet. I'm going to apply later, but the kind of roles I'm looking for, I haven't found the right one, or I haven't been successful. So I am also in that position of, oh my God, I did a placement. Like, why am I still not getting what I want? But the only thing that's keeping me going is the faith that I've done it once, I can do it again. And when it is meant to happen, it will. So that would probably be my only piece of advice. Obviously, I've I've only done like one job. I'm not that that knowledgeable yet, but based on that one job, perseverance really kept me, um, made Warner so fruitful in a way. But yeah, that'd be my only advice.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice. Something I totally agree with as well about persevering. I think that's something everyone will go through eventually or has gone through in the past. You need to
Exactly.
go through it no matter what. Just it's gonna pay off. That's just what I'm
Yeah.
gonna say.
Adding on to that is also, I think, learning from your mistakes, and improving the next time, basically, which I really did with my placement year. I can see it in my graduate applications. Like, my first application is much better than my first placement application. So yeah, I think adding on to perseverance, just learning from your mistakes and getting feedback anytime you can get feedback. I know some companies may not give it, but even if it's from your career mentors, like at uni, or your manager at your old job, or anything, like getting some sort of feedback as well, um, will always help. Has always helped me grow.
Cool. Again, Sama, that's also another great piece of advice. And anyways, thank you so much for joining me today. It was really nice to get obviously a closer idea into your career journey and how the whole application process was like and how it was like working at Warner Brothers. And I'm sure, I hope you watching this right now feel definitely more connected or inspired or just sort of understand now a lot more behind the scenes, and especially for an entertainment company like Warner Brothers, what it takes to get in and the types of people they're looking for, or a tip or advice as Samah has mentioned. Cool.
Thank you.
You can subscribe, like this video if you're watching this on YouTube. We have more videos coming up soon, and stay tuned. Take care. Thanks again, Samah, for joining.
Thank you.